I was just thinking now, I was always wondering what would Ray Harryhausen and Monty Python do if they worked together, and I think we know now that they may have made Early Man.
Oh, right.
Is there a sense for you? I know there was certain films that you looked at a little bit for inspiration, like the Mighty Ducks and the Full Monty, but ultimately there's always that desire to make something of its own beast, its own little kind of thing. Was that important to you?
Yeah, always really. It's always very important not just to be derivative of other things, and partly what really appealed to me was that I'd never seen an underdog prehistoric sports movie before. So that kind of appealed to me.
I'm sure it's out there somewhere. I'm sure Roger Corman has managed it at some point.
It's a bit of a risk, really, not but that's what attracts you, is not knowing if it's going to work.
I was thinking, you've got 273 puppets, I think, made by 22 models over 30 months. Your shoot began in September 2016. I think it was 33 animators over 37 sets and nearly 45 production units. Is there ever a wobble? Is there ever a vertigo thinking in the middle of all this, great work, oh, I wonder if this works. I wonder if we're right. Yeah,
all the time. I think it kind of partly what keeps you going, and it's the risk factor that is kind of enticing as well. But also, because we're, Mark Burton and myself on the script, we were and a small team of development people. We were on it for 2 or 3 years, pitching the idea here and there, and trying to get the funding at first, and then even in mid-filming, you're still working on the script and re-storyboarding scenes and finding glitches and finding problems in the story with the overall arc and with the characters and who's it about, and maybe we're swaying one way or too much emphasis on the wrong character, and so you're adjusting it and rewriting all the time, and then having to go back to the actors to re-record scenes and stuff.
Well, when you mention the actors, you have a wonderful cast here. Eddie Redmayne is wonderful with Tom Hiddleston and Timothy Spall and Mark Williams and all these guys. Would anybody ever, like Pixar, would anybody ever actually say no to Aardman? Because I would imagine it's just a joy to sort of be invited into the party of an Aardman film.
Oh, I mean, that's nice that it feels like that now. I didn't... Coming from where I am, I never know that, but it's been nice, the response of people then, and just the privilege of being able to know that now you can just pick up the phone and or just call up anyone and know. I mean, not everybody can always do it. Obviously, they've got other commitments or tastes or whatever. But there's a good chance now people will want to do it.
We mentioned the scale of a production like this, and there's a lot of people involved, and certainly Aardman is one of the great kind of animation studios in the world now. But I always imagine that day-to-day life is somewhere between Studio Ghibli and Last of the Summer Wine, maybe with a bit of the Detectorist thrown in there just for field days. Is it still feel like that sort of small? It seems very kind of cottage-like. I don't know whether it still retains that. It's hard to maintain when you're that successful and that big an operation.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good explanation. It is, and I think part of the problem is because we've grown from a very cottage kind of, and it's all very hands-on and handmade, but on a feature size, the challenge is to create, obviously to the turnover of animation, but also to keep that sense of that it's by, it's got one voice behind it and made in a, handmade craft kind of way. So it looks cottage industry, but we've somehow had to, it sounds crude, but to kind of industrialize it. And, like, for example, it's still the conventional technique, but like Doug, just to make the animation quicker and to keep the style together, Doug would have loads of like replaceable mouths, all with different shapes, and he'd have like 12 or 15 different mouths that would cover all the different syllables of every word. Occasional one-offs if he has to really shout loud or something like that, a really big open mouth. But we keep them made of clay as well. His face is clay and his mouths are clay, so the animator can still tweak them, and so it doesn't feel too mechanical.
And with I was thinking too, with the success that Aardman have had, that there's always been this sense that you're outside the studio system, as it were, like you're your own little voice.
Yes.
And is it easy to maintain a certain, I wouldn't know if you'd call it anti-establishment, but it does feel like you're not really necessarily playing by studio rules all the time, and you've learned from DreamWorks and others that it doesn't quite fit with your way of thinking.
Yes.
Is that I don't know if that's proving quite easy because you're successful, or whether it's always a challenge to maintain the singular voice.
It is. You're right. It is a value that's always been there, even if it's not even spoken. You know, it's something that we share. I think to remain ourselves. It's partly why we stay in Bristol and aren't in Hollywood, or you know, and we love this humour. You know, at this side of the Atlantic, and keeping our identity, I guess, and making films about values that we care about.
Well, I was thinking we're both incredibly good-looking men and successful in our 50s, and it did strike me when watching the movie that as much as you make a movie for everybody to get a kick out of, putting in things like Mud's tiger feet does suggest a certain pleasure for those who are making the film too.
Yes.
Because there wouldn't be many teenagers who would instinctively know, oh, that's the old Mud hit from 1973.
Yeah,
or,
right.
Is there a little bit of that too? Obviously, we're making this for a lot of people, but really got to be chuckling ourselves at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a lot of it is. I mean, it sounds a common thing to say, but we do very much make films for ourselves, and I think that way you can be true to yourself, and other people then recognise it. Because these things, if you're true to yourself, then it actually becomes universal, because it means something, and you find that it's a common thing, and. And I'm surprised just what sort of vocabulary of music young people do have, though. That,
True.
You know, it's very diverse these days. And
YouTube has made it very democratic. They find anything anywhere.
Yeah.
Which is great. I've been given the friendly finger to wrap up. Very nice to talk to you, son.
Yeah, you too. Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Great to see you again. Yes.
I had a few others on.